land is my home, it's like my mother. However, that was all taken away from us once the settlers arrived. When the British sailed across the sea and colonised and settled in Australia, it all began in 1788. We thought they were white spirits of good, so we welcomed them to our home, but they took over us and treated us inhumanely, like animals. We weren't even recognised as people or humans. They came in and introduced diseases such as whooping cough, common cold, smallpox, tuberculosis, influenza, and measles, and caused food shortages, leaving us to die. They paired Aboriginal women with white men to breed out the colour of us, couldn't practice our culture, dances, or songs, as well as forcibly taking us away from our parents to teach us white customs. They called this the stolen generation. My name is Marinda, and this is my story. We, the Aboriginals, led very healthy lifestyles, and so we did not get sick very often. We had not built up a natural resistance to disease, which was why we were so affected by the diseases brought by the Europeans. As settlement grew, so did our exposure to diseases, which greatly reduced our numbers. Disease was the cause of 60% of the Aboriginal deaths in the Port Phillip area. Before the Europeans arrived in Melbourne, a third of the population of the eastern tribes had been killed by smallpox that had been spread from Sydney. Birth rates declined and traditional society suffered. When the Europeans settled on our land, they hunted our animals and were not considerate of the amount The kangaroo population decreased drastically because they were hunted in large amounts. They would also catch our fish by using substantial nets and pollute our water and cut down trees, which caused our animals to lose their habitats. Later on, this impacted the amount of food and water left for us, which resulted in food. 55% of Aboriginal communities lacked access to fresh food and water. This was because when new animals and cattle were introduced, they spread diseases to our animals, which became contaminated, causing food shortages and very weak food security. Between 1 in 3 children were forcibly taken from their families. They were placed in dorms, institutions, adopted by white families, and put in white foster homes. They were prohibited from practicing their language and culture, anything that kept them connected to their Indigenous backgrounds. This led to the children losing their identity, culture, and language. They were often wrongly told that their parents had died or abandoned them, and often never knew their biological families or where they had been taken from. They were often given a low level of education as they were expected to become labourers or domestic servants. There is a high incidence of depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, and suicide among the stolen generation. Families of those taken had to deal with the feelings of grief and loss. Culture was lost as the children had been taken and the knowledge, culture, language, songs and dances could not be passed on. I stand today as part of the stolen generation wanting back what is ours. Our freedom, our family, our rights, our culture.